The snow fell heavily on that Christmas Eve in rural West Texas as Jake Harlan slammed on the brakes of his old pickup truck. There, illuminated by the headlights, was a shivering young man, no older than 19, desperately digging through the overflowing dumpster behind the closed diner, his thin jacket no match for the biting wind. Jake stared for a long second, his calloused hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. He had seen plenty of hard times in his 35 years running the Harlan Ranch, but this hit different, like a punch straight to the gut on a night meant for family and warmth. He killed the engine and stepped out, boots crunching on the fresh powder. "Hey kid, you all right?" His voice carried over the wind, rough from years of shouting commands across dusty pastures. The young man froze, a half-eaten burger wrapper clutched in his gloved hand, eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. Up close, Jake could see the hollow cheeks, the matted dark hair under a torn beanie, and the way his shoulders trembled, not just from cold. "I'm fine," the kid muttered, turning back to the trash like it was the only thing keeping him alive. But Jake wasn't buying it. He'd lost his own parents young, knew what rock bottom looked like, and this boy was standing in it on Christmas of all nights. "Look, diner's shut. Ain't nothing good in there but scraps. Come on, I got a warm truck and coffee back at my place. No strings." The young man hesitated, glancing up with eyes that held too much story for his age. "Why? You don't know me. Name's Jake, and I know what it's like to be out here with nowhere to go." Jake extended a hand, steady despite the storm building inside him. Something about the kid's quiet defiance tugged at memories he'd buried long ago, back when he was married to Sarah and pretending the emptiness was just ranch life wearing him down. The boy finally took the hand, grip weak but grateful. Ethan Riley." They rode in silence at first, the heater blasting as Jake peeled off his spare coat and tossed it over. Ethan huddled into it, staring out at the passing fields blanketed white. Jake kept his eyes on the road, but his mind raced. What was a kid doing out here alone? Runaway? Trouble with the law? He didn't press, not yet. The ranch house came into view, lights he'd left on for himself glowing like a beacon. Inside, Jake set Ethan up in the spare room, the one that had sat empty since Sarah left 3 years back. He heated up leftover stew, watched the boy eat like he hadn't seen food in days. "You from around here?" Jake asked finally, leaning against the counter with a mug of black coffee. Ethan shook his head, swallowing hard. "Austin area. Left a while back. Family stuff." The way he said it, clipped and guarded, told Jake everything he needed to know without details. He nodded, not pushing. "Stay as long as you need. Ranch could use an extra hand if you're up for it. Pays fair, bed's warm." Ethan looked up, surprise flickering across his face for the first time. "You serious?" Jake shrugged, hiding the strange pull in his chest. "Christmas miracle, or whatever. Get some sleep, kid." That night, Jake lay in his own bed, listening to the wind howl, mind replaying the moment he'd spotted Ethan in the trash. He'd always been the steady one, the guy who fixed fences and herded cattle without complaint. But something in Ethan's eyes mirrored a restlessness Jake had ignored for years, a quiet question about who he really was under the Stetson and boots. By morning, the snow had stopped, and Jake woke to the smell of coffee already brewing. Ethan was up, awkward but trying, offering a hesitant smile that cracked the ice around Jake's guarded heart just a little. Little did either know that simple rescue was about to unravel everything they thought they knew about themselves and the world outside the ranch gates. Ethan settled into ranch life faster than Jake expected, his hands learning the rhythm of chores despite the city softness still clinging to him. By the second day, he was mucking stalls alongside Jake, the two working in comfortable silence, broken only by occasional instructions or the lowing of cattle. Jake watched him from the corner of his eye, noting how Ethan's shoulders straightened a bit each time he completed a task, like he was reclaiming pieces of himself with every bale of hay tossed. The ranch hands, old-timers like Grizzled Hank and Quiet Miguel, raised eyebrows at the new kid but kept opinions to themselves after Jake's firm word. Christmas passed quietly. No big family gatherings since Jake's folks were gone and Sarah's absence still echoed. Instead, they shared a simple meal of grilled steaks and store-bought pie, Ethan opening up in fragments over seconds. My dad found out about me, Ethan said one evening as they sat on the porch, beers in hand watching the stars pierce the clear Texas sky. About liking guys. Said I was a disgrace, told me to get out before I ruined the family name. Mom just cried and looked away. Jake felt a twist in his gut, memories of his own marriage flashing unbidden. How he'd forced himself into a life that never quite fit because it was what folks expected. Rough, he replied, voice low. But you're here now. That takes guts. Ethan glanced over, something unspoken passing between them, a shared weight of secrets carried too long. Jake changed the subject quick, pointing out constellations his granddad had taught him, but the air felt charged, heavier than the winter chill. Days turned to weeks, and the bond deepened without either naming it. Ethan proved handy with the horses, calming a skittish mare Jake had struggled with for months. In return, Jake taught him to drive the tractor, laughing when Ethan stalled it the first few tries. Nights brought quiet talks by the fire, stories of Jake's rodeo days before the ranch claimed him full-time, and Ethan's dreams of art school he'd abandoned when home turned hostile. Jake felt the pull stronger each day, a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt since before Sarah, but he shoved it down hard. He was straight, wasn't he? The ranch, the town, everything demanded it. Yet watching Ethan laugh at one of Hank's bad jokes or wipe sweat from his brow after a long day stirred questions Jake wasn't ready to face. Trouble brewed when word spread in town. Old Mrs. Whitaker at the feed store mentioned the new boy staying at Harlan Ranch, her tone laced with curiosity that bordered on gossip. Jake brushed it off, but inside doubt gnawed. What if folks started talking? What if Ethan's past caught up? One afternoon, a storm rolled in sudden, forcing them to shelter in the barn. Rain hammered the roof as they sat on hay bales, soaked and laughing at the timing. Ethan's shirt clung transparent, and Jake looked away too fast, heart hammering for reasons he couldn't explain. Thanks again, Jake, Ethan said softly, eyes earnest. For everything. No one's ever given me a chance like this. Jake nodded, throat tight. You earned it, kid. We all got our battles. But as lightning cracked outside, Jake wondered if his biggest battle was just beginning, right here in the quiet spaces between them. The weeks blurred into a new rhythm that felt dangerously like home for both men. Ethan's presence filled the ranch house with small changes, fresh coffee waiting at dawn, sketches of the horses taped to the fridge that made Jake smile despite himself. He caught himself watching Ethan more, the way his laugh lit up the dim kitchen after a long day, or how he'd hum old country tunes while fixing fence posts. Jake told himself it was just gratitude, just the company easing the loneliness that had settled in after the divorce. But deep down, cracks were forming in the walls he'd built around his heart. Sarah had left because she sensed he was never fully there, and now Ethan was forcing Jake to look at the parts of himself he'd buried under layers of Texas dirt and duty. One crisp February morning, they rode out to check the far pastures, the horses steady under them as frost crunched beneath hooves. Ethan rode beside him easy now, no longer the scared kid from the dumpster, but a young man, finding his footing. Ever think about leaving this place? Ethan asked, glancing over with that open curiosity Jake was starting to crave. Jake shrugged, reins loose in his hands. Thought about it once. After Sarah. But the ranch is in my blood. Folks here, they count on me. Ethan nodded, but his expression clouded. Must be nice having roots that strong. Mine just snapped. The conversation drifted to lighter things, but later that night, Jake lay awake, replaying the words. Roots. He'd clung to them so tight, he'd forgotten how to grow in new directions. The turning point came during a supply run to town. They walked into the hardware store together, shoulders brushing accidental in the narrow aisle, and Jake felt eyes on them. Whispers followed, the kind small towns specialize in. Later at the diner, old buddies clapped Jake on the back, but shot Ethan sidelong looks that screamed questions. Back at the ranch, Jake brushed it off with a joke, but Ethan withdrew, helping with chores in silence. That evening over whiskey on the porch, Ethan finally spoke. I don't want to bring trouble on you, Jake. Maybe I should move on. The words hit like a branding iron. Jake set his glass down hard. You ain't going nowhere. This is your home now if you want it. Their eyes locked, and for the first time, Jake didn't look away. The air thickened with everything unsaid, years of Jake pretending and Ethan surviving colliding in that single moment. Inside, Jake paced his room after Ethan turned in, heart pounding with a truth he could no longer deny. He wasn't straight. Never had been. The realization crashed over him like the winter storm outside, terrifying and freeing all at once. He thought of his parents' expectations, the town stares, the life he'd built on a foundation of lies. But Ethan's quiet strength chipped away at it all. Across the hall, Ethan stared at the ceiling, wondering if the kindness he'd found was more than friendship, scared to hope because hope had burned him before. Neither slept easy that night, the ranch house holding its breath for the words neither was ready to say yet. Spring thawed the fields, and with it the last barriers between them. Workdays stretched longer with calving season, but evenings brought them closer, sharing meals and stories that peeled back layers neither had shown anyone else. Jake opened up about the marriage that felt like wearing boots 2 sizes too small, how he tried to fit the mold until it cracked him. Ethan listened without judgment, his own scars from Austin fresh but healing under the Texas sun. One warm evening after branding, they sat by the creek, boots off and feet in the cool water. "I've never told anyone this," Jake started, voice rough, "but I think I always knew. Just didn't have the guts to say it out loud." Ethan turned, eyes steady. "Knew what?" Jake swallowed hard. "That it wasn't women for me. Never was." The confession hung there, vulnerable and raw. Ethan reached over, hand covering Jake's on the grass. "You're braver than you think, Jake. Takes guts to admit it, even to yourself." What followed wasn't fireworks or grand declarations, just a quiet shift. Their first kiss happened under the stars 2 nights later, tentative and full of the weight of years denied. It tasted like possibility, like coming home after a long, hard ride. No rush, no pressure, just 2 men finally seeing each other clear. But joy came laced with fear. Jake knew the town wouldn't understand. And when Ethan's phone lit up with a missed call from his mother's number, reality crashed back. "They want me back for some family meeting," Ethan said the next morning, face pale. Probably to pretend it never happened. Jake pulled him close. "You don't owe them anything. But if you go, I'm right there with you." The decision to face it together marked another step. They drove to Austin that weekend, Jake's truck eating miles while tension built. Ethan's parents met them at a neutral diner, faces tight with disapproval. The confrontation was ugly, words like disgrace and influence flying until Jake stood tall. "Your son's a good man, stronger than most. He deserves better than shame." Ethan watched Jake defend him with tears in his eyes, the support cracking open old wounds and letting light in. They left without resolution, but hand in hand in the parking lot, something solidified. Back at the ranch, the bond deepened into quiet intimacy, stolen moments, and shared dreams. Yet Jake felt the ground shifting under them both, society's eyes narrowing even as their hearts opened wide. He knew choices were coming that would test everything. Summer brought heat and harder truths. The ranch buzzed with extra hands for hay season, but whispers grew louder in town after someone spotted Jake and Ethan at the fair, laughing too close over cotton candy. Hank pulled Jake aside one afternoon. "Folks are talking, boss. Saying things that ain't their business but could hurt the ranch." Jake stood firm. "My lamb, my life." But doubt crept in during sleepless nights. Ethan noticed the tension, pulling away to give Jake space he didn't want. Misunderstandings piled up when Ethan's father showed up unannounced, demanding his son return and threatening legal nonsense about influence. The argument in the ranch yard turned heated, Ethan torn between past and present until he walked away shaking. Jake followed, finding him by the barn, tears streaming. "I can't ruin you too," Ethan whispered. Jake cupped his face. "You saved me, Ethan. Don't you see that?" The breaking point came during a brutal drought that threatened the herd. Jake worked round the clock, exhaustion mixing with fear of losing everything he'd built. Ethan stayed by his side, proving his worth again and again until Jake's walls crumbled completely. In a quiet moment after saving a struggling calf, Jake pulled Ethan into the shadows of the barn. "I love you," he said simply, the words he'd held back for months finally free. Ethan's response, was a kiss full of relief and promise. But peace shattered when Ethan's mother called, begging him home for a fresh start, and painting Jake as the villain. Torn, Ethan left for one night to talk, returning with bruises on his spirit and a letter from his father disowning him fully. Jake held him through the sobs, sacrificing his own pride by reaching out to a lawyer friend for protection. The town council even hinted at zoning trouble if certain lifestyles continued. Jake sold off some stock to weather the storm, a tangible cost of standing by the man he loved. Through it all, they fought back with quiet determination, misunderstandings turning to deeper trust. Ethan's growth shone brightest when he confronted his fears head-on, telling Jake, "I choose us, no matter what." The sacrifices bound them tighter, forging steel from the fire of prejudice and doubt. Fall painted the ranch in golds and reds, mirroring the warmth that had settled between Jake and Ethan after the storms. The legal threats faded when Ethan's parents backed off, worn down by their son's unyielding resolve and Jake's quiet strength. The ranch hands came around one by one, Hank even clapping Ethan on the back after a successful roundup, muttering about how the kid had earned his place. Jake watched the transformation with pride, seeing the scared boy from the Christmas dumpster become a confident partner who sketched ranch life by day and planned futures by night. They talked openly now about everything, from expanding the herd to maybe traveling once the busy season eased. Ethan's art found new life in local galleries. His first sale, a painting of the two of them on horseback that captured everything words couldn't. One crisp evening, they sat on the same porch where it all began, hands linked as the sun dipped low. "Remember that dumpster?" Ethan asked with a soft laugh. Jake pulled him closer. "Best decision I ever made." The journey had reshaped them both. Jake learned to embrace who he was without apology, shedding the weight of years pretending. Ethan found roots deeper than blood, healing old wounds through love that asked nothing but truth. Friend from town started showing quiet support, small gestures like invitations to barbecues that once would have been closed doors. The ranch thrived, not despite the changes, but because of the strength they brought. As winter approached again, Jake knew the path ahead would still hold challenges, but they faced them together, two men who had chosen each other over fear. Their story wasn't perfect, marked by scars and hard choices, but it was real in theirs. In the end, the simple act of stopping on a snowy Christmas night had rewritten two destinies, proving that love, when honest, could bridge any divide. Is choosing love over society's expectations always the right path, true or false?